HarperCollins presents Planes, Trains and Toilet Doors, 50 Places That Changed British Politics. Written and read by Matt Chorley. Introduction. March 2010. Age 27. I'm standing in the back of a mint green VW camper van called Maisie, sniffing a pint of milk to see if it is off. Sitting with his legs hanging out of the door of the van, my guest is complaining that my hobnobs are soft. Within a few weeks, he will be Deputy Prime Minister, except neither of us knows it yet. We're in Cornwall. I'm midway through my marginal mystery tour of the swing seats spread across my patch as London editor of the Western Morning News, an important newspaper in Devon, Cornwall and Somerset back then, of course, because they didn't have the internet, or television, or electricity. As a child of the Somerset levels, I'm allowed to make these jokes. I'd been in two minds about even bothering with the detour to meet Nick Clegg, the youthful leader of the Liberal Democrats, with a mere walk-on part in the blockbuster battle between Gordon Brown and David Cameron, but the sun was out and would make some easy copy. I'd swung Maisie off the road onto the gravel car park of a Cornish tin mining company, and a Lib Dem press officer came bowling over very enthusiastically. They're always enthusiastic, Lib Dem press officers. They're just glad to see anybody, to be honest. So he pops his head through the window of the van and says, "Great, have you got the refreshments?" "What?" "I've got down here on my itinerary it says Matt Chorley is providing refreshments." He was right. That is what it said. But he was also wrong. They'd got the wrong idea about the camper van. I hadn't been sleeping in it because it was so cold and wet and miserable in March, instead opting for pubs, B&Bs and mate sofas. So I also hadn't kept tabs on the 4-pint bottle of milk I'd bought a week earlier. And that's how I ended up in the back of a camper van, detecting the dairy to make sure I didn't poison the man who would soon, amazingly, be the second most powerful politician in the country. I could have changed the course of political history with a curdled coffee. Given how the next 5 years were to unfold for the Lib Dems, Clegg probably wishes I had. The direction of British politics, and with it my life, your life, and those of less important people, has been decided on less, and in even more extraordinary and ordinary places. So much, arguably too much, of our daily national political conversation is about Number 10, Whitehall and the Houses of Parliament, the shenanigans of the weird inhabitants of the so-called Westminster Village, a village no normal person would want to move to, as they strut the corridors of power, whispering in corners, practising high politics and low skullduggery, and feeling terribly important. And yet, so many of the key turning points, which have decided who runs the country and doesn't, and how they run it, or don't, have taken place not in the mock Gothic, crumbling corridors and courtyards of the Palace of Westminster, or the higgledy-piggledy terraced houses of Downing Street, nor in the windowless halitosis hotspots of party conferences. Instead, they've played out in towns and cities and villages across the country, unlikely, often humdrum places where accidents happen that change everything. I've spent 2 decades reporting from Westminster, joining the press gallery when Tony Blair was Prime Minister and David Cameron was on course to lose to David Davis in the Tory leadership contest. Since then, I've interviewed 6 of the last 7 people who made it to be Prime Minister, and reported from Downing Street and Brussels, from the Houses of Parliament, Holyrood. In theory, these are the places where the big moments happen. Yet history is not fussy, and can be made, in fact prefers to be made, away from the gaze of people like me. It unfolds at politicians' kitchen tables, in downstairs loos, and in the beds they weren't meant to be sleeping in. The everyday happens every day. There was a brilliant scene in Armando Iannucci's satire In the Loop, a big screen spin-off of The Thick of It, where Simon Foster, a British government minister played by Tom Hollander, has to break away from attempts to prevent an Anglo-US invasion of a Middle Eastern country to deal with an eccentric constituent complaining about an unstable wall. Global politics must play second fiddle to the local. This portrayal of the constituency link retained by MPs and ministers alike sums up why British politics remains fascinating and reassuringly unpredictable. It is why Prime Ministers on parade get buttonholed by members of the public wherever they are, even if the
Sample complete. Ready to continue?